Well, welcome back to Lucore Automotive Services. Today I'm actually not working on this Ford Lightning, even though it's a really cool car. It came to us for a few different things previously. We rebuilt the posi in the rear and did some brake work and whatnot. And then the guy was complaining about a tire vibration, and he actually had wheels and tires put on at another facility. We balanced them out, road forced them, told them it had one bad tire. So he took it back to them and they rebalanced the tires and said, here you go. And then he brought it back to us again. He said, I still have a tire vibration. And, well, you needed a tire. Did they put a new tire on it? He's like, no. So we road forced it again. It still needs a tire. So we ended up giving him the wheel and tire. He took it back to them. They gave him a new tire. Brought it back to us. We rebalanced it because it was balanced incorrectly again. But this one finally, instead of having like a 30-pound road force, now has a 5-pound road force, and it balanced out with a couple ounces. So we're pretty happy with that tire. We're gonna go drive this, make sure there's no tire vibration. Bummer, I get to drive a Ford Lightning. It's actually a very nice truck. You would, by looking at it, you would not think that it has 180,000 miles on it. Clearly a very well taken care of vehicle. But after I get done with my test drive on this, we will go over here and work on this GMC. It's a 2017. It's got some suspension issues, and we will get into that. If that's the type of stuff you'd like to watch, stick around. We'll get into it here in a minute. You should be able to see in the picture how badly this truck sits. The tires have super negative camber. They're actually towed out as well. I don't know how this guy actually drove this thing here, but he did. The customer's complaint is the truck is wandering all over the road. I believe it. I did not drive it. I drove it onto my rack, looked it over. So the backstory on this truck is it is a salvage vehicle. Salvage title vehicle, which means it's been wrecked to the point where the insurance company said, we're not fixing that truck. So somebody bought the truck and decided to fix it. And it hasn't been right since. Now, the lift kit, it looks to have a BDS lift kit on it, but then it has rough country coilovers. So it's got a mix of parts. Near as I can tell, the BDS lift kit is not the problem. It would be really hard to bend both knuckles the same amount. Which that was my first thought. I went, oh, maybe in the accident, the BDS kit got bent. No, not likely. Because it would be really hard to do it evenly on both sides. And I'm like, well, it's got brand new upper and lower control arms. Can't install the lower control arms wrong. And I'm like, well, let's see if they've got the wrong control arms up top. And so we did a little research, and we actually picked up the correct right and left upper control arms for the vehicle last night on my way home, so we can make sure they're the correct part and make sure they're oriented correctly. Because last night about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up in bed and I'm like, I bet the upper control arms are installed on the wrong sides, because that would change your geometry. It would definitely change your caster and camber. It could certainly cause some issues, and it would look just fine, because on these trucks you can install them on either side, but they are specific to one side and to the other side. So, let's talky more worky. We'll pull this thing in. I'm going to pull the control arms off. We will identify that they are either installed correctly or incorrectly, and we will remedy the issue. Fun stuff. That Lightning hasn't defrosted any yet because it's like 20 degrees outside. So I'm going to go inside for a few minutes. These inner tire rod end. That's not optimal. Well, I don't know if those upper control arms are installed on the wrong sides or not, but we're going to find out. Pull these wheels off so we can pull the spacers off, so we can see if these wheels will fit without the spacers. Oh golly, those are not light. Can't be on backwards. I don't think that's it. Huge difference. I don't know. Let's see what the numbers tell us. So I've got this 2017 GMC pickup truck up in the air, and there's a lot of bad. There's a lot of bad things going on in this truck. The customer will either be happy that I found all the problems, or at least all the problems that I have found so far, or he's going to hate my guts because he's not going to like the answers I have for him. So I walked around this truck. When it came in, you can see right off the bat, it's got excessive toe, it's got excessive camber, negative toe, tops pointed in on both sides. It looks to be equal, but it's also towed out. So driving this thing around had to be horrible. And you can see by the front tires, they're peeled off on the inside and they're gone. So I'm like, all right, it's been through a few hands. Did somebody put control arms on the wrong sides? Because that could cause all sorts of weird things. Is there something bent? Is there multiple things bent? Correct parts installed? What's going on with this truck? So I look over this truck and put it up in the air, and I start looking, and we picked up the correct control arms. We actually picked up brand new correct by VIN control arms, and they are correct on the truck, and they are on the correct sides, so that's not our problem. Okay, we know that. Lower control arms have been replaced, and again, they appear to be correct. So I start walking around the truck to try and make more of the story make sense. So it was a rebuilt salvage truck. Somebody bought it from a wreck. He thinks it was rolled over. He's not sure. So I start looking, and I see more things. So right off the bat, I see this thing was hammered in this corner, and it has frame damage here. So I walk to the back after pulling off the rear wheels, and I realize I can't take off the rear spacers because they've lopped off the lug nut studs. I'll show you those. So it's got 1.5 to 2-inch spacers on the rears, which I would love to remove to get a better feel for the truck, but they've cut off the lug nut studs on the axles, so I'm not going to be able to remove these guys. But what's worse in the back is I noticed it has a brand new drive shaft in the rear. I'm like, oh man, when this thing wrecked, it must have shucked the drive shaft or bent the drive shaft because it's got new drive shafts. I'm like, let's take a look at the rear axle, shall we? So I stand back here right about where the camera's sitting, and I take a look at the back of the truck. And I look at that lift block, and I'm like, man, that looks weird. And then I look at this lift block, and I'm like, that looks even weirder. And you can see that this U-bolt is heaved sideways, and this lift block is actually pitched forward, or actually the axle is pitched forward and moved forward. And you can see the same thing over here. And I'll see if I can get you a good shot of what this looks like, but basically the rear U-bolts were never torqued correctly, so this rear axle was rocking and moving around on acceleration, deceleration. So more than likely what caused the original wreck was this rear axle not being installed correctly and it moving around and rocking and pitching and weaving, and then they probably hit a slippery surface and it just went woo right into the ditch. So the good news is the rear can be fixed. Unfortunately, so these lift blocks have a bolt that go all the way through them up and lock through, or maybe they don't. I don't know. I'll have to take them apart to look. They either have a alignment dowel in the center of them, but that alignment dowel has now elongated the hole that they go to align the rear axle on the springs. Now, I don't know if this gentleman's going to have me disassemble this so that I can get you a picture of that, but I can tell you right now, your spring perch has a hole right in the center of it, and your leaf spring has a pinch bolt that goes through it, and the head of the bolt goes into the hole on the axle, and that's what centers your axle on a leaf spring, side to side and front to back. And then your U-bolts go down, clamp it all together to make it all one. When your U-bolts are loose, that stuff moves around. When it moves around, the head of that pin wears a hole, or wears the hole, into a rectangular position where the axle can slide farther and farther back and forth because it just erodes it away. It's just torque and friction. So in the back, we're going to need new lift blocks, new U-bolts, and probably new spring perches. The bad news is that this axle's forward at least an inch, which means when we put the axle in the correct position, the brand new rear drive shaft that was made for this truck may end up being too short, hence it will have to be made again. So take $600 and throw it in the trash. So that's the bad news in the back end. Now let's talk about the bad news in the front end, because there's some bad stuff going on. It gets worse. So as we move our way forward in the truck tells us a little bit more of its story. The frame rails back here actually look pretty straight. I don't see too much damage. But when I get to the transmission cross member, there's something impacted it right here, which actually heaved this part of the frame backwards and possibly in. This cross member is buckled right here. It is actually heaved back, and because it's heaved back, it's actually crooked here. You can actually see it from this line of sight. It pitched the transfer case skid plate up, so much so that as this truck's being driven, the engine vibration of the transfer case is actually, the skid plate is actually cutting into the transfer case. So that's not great. You can actually see it's almost created its own drain plug. So we'll see, because this is like an inch up, so that tells you how much this is heaved. This side doesn't look too bad, but this side's whacked. And by whacked, I mean whacked hard. So now we get to the ugly. We've seen the bad in the back. We've seen the bad in the middle, which you can see right here. All hammered right there, and it's buckled right here. Now remember, I'm fighting a negative camber issue. So this thing was in an accident, and it was hammered here, and you can actually see somebody needs to put the Sawzall down. They Sawzalled all this out, they Sawzalled all that out to make those tires with the wheel spacers work. I'm actually going to remove these wheel spacers so that we can see the vehicle a little better. I can't remove the ones from the back, but I am going to remove these from up front just so that I can see things better. But when you look right here, specifically from here to here, there is a massive buckle in this frame, which means that frame rail is pushed in at this point. And if your frame rail pushes in, it pulls your upper control arm in, and when your upper control arm comes in, your camber leans in. So this truck needs a frame replacement or a frame pull to become anywhere near alignable. So that's the news I get to give our customer on this one, and we'll see what he wants to do, because I know a couple people with frame racks, so we can see if they're willing to even try, but it's going to be not cheap in any way, shape, or form. truck came in with a concern of truck wanders all over the road. It is not easily controllable. It needs an alignment. No, it needs a frame. And then it needs an alignment. Because then we'll find out whatever else it needs. So, bad news in the rear end. Bad news in the middle. Bad news up front. So not a great show for you guys today. Nothing I can win on this one. But thanks for watching. Click like, subscribe. Leave us a comment below. We try to fix them all. Sometimes they're not fixable. So we'll see. See what the guy wants to do. At any rate, you guys have a great day. We'll see you on the next one.